Before you get mad, promise me one thing. Watch this video to the end. But first, I have to do something that would probably annoy a lot of developers and a lot of Isaac fans. I have to treat it the way I treat some random developer's prototype. Not as a masterpiece, not as one of the most important roguelikes in history. Just as a game someone sent me saying, "Hey, can you tell me what you think?" And I promise you, if I actually did this exercise, the first things I'd say wouldn't be very kind. So the first thing that jumps out at me is the controls. I'm not saying they're broken, I'm saying something different. If an indie developer showed me a prototype today with this movement and shooting system, I'd probably tell them to rethink it. Seriously, Isaac only shoots in the 4 cardinal directions. And it doesn't seem like a technical limitation. It feels like a deliberate design choice. And it's a choice that affects practically every fight. Think about it. How many times do you find yourself wanting to shoot diagonally? All the time. And every time the game says no. At first it feels almost clunky, almost dated, like something's missing. When I test a prototype, the first thing I look for is whether the controls disappear from my mind after 5 minutes. If I'm still thinking about them, that usually means something is wrong. With Isaac, though, I'm still thinking about them dozens of hours in. And that's a strange feeling because normally that would be criticism. Here, though, I don't know, but hold on, we'll get there. Then there's the movement. Isaac doesn't slide, it doesn't accelerate, it doesn't give you that almost surgical precision you get from a lot of modern twin-stick shooters. If anything, it's the opposite. Sometimes it feels like the character is fighting against the player, and that's the kind of thing that, in a playtest today, would probably draw a lot of comments. And in fact, a lot of games that came out after Isaac took another direction. Just look at Enter the Gungeon. Everything there is smoother, more readable, faster, more precise. And yet, despite all of that, Isaac still has something going for it. Because rationally, it should be giving me way more problems than it actually does. One thing that genuinely drives me up the wall is readability. This, in my opinion, is the strongest criticism you can make of the game. When you start a run, everything's fine. Few enemies, few projectiles, the screen is clean. Then 20 minutes go by, you find an item, then another, then another, and suddenly the screen explodes. Giant tears, lasers, explosions, enemies. Everything is happening at once, and sometimes it genuinely becomes hard to tell what's going on. This isn't just me. It's become one of the most common complaints from the community over the years, especially once builds get absurdly powerful. One question I ask myself constantly is, can the player instantly tell what's dangerous? Sounds like a simple question. It's not, because all it takes is one wrong color choice, or one animation that's a little too flashy, or one extra particle effect. And suddenly the player's brain needs half a second longer to process what's happening. Isaac, though, sometimes seems to completely ignore this rule. Every so often I'll actually stop mid-run and think, who thought this was a good idea? There's another thing that would almost certainly get flagged in any playtest today. The sheer amount of information the game deliberately chooses to hide from the player. Because Isaac almost seems to enjoy taking control away from you. And that's a design philosophy you see a lot less of today than you did 10 years ago. The sheer amount of hidden information is one of the first things that makes me think, if this were a first-time developer's prototype, I'd send it back for revisions. Not because it's inherently wrong, because normally it's a terrible idea. Here, the game basically just says, go, and cross your fingers. Same story with pills. Every time I find one, the exact same thing happens. Isaac is full of risky decisions. Then there's the level design. This is maybe the trickiest part to talk about, because you have to separate level design from procedural generation. Isaac's rooms are hand-designed. Their arrangement during a run is randomized. It's the way they are combined that changes every time. That said, some rooms still make me roll my eyes to this day. You walk in, enemies everywhere, rocks blocking your movement, projectiles already flying at you, and you're reacting before you've even had time to register where you are. There are rooms that, especially the first few times, feel built to punish the player the moment they walk through the door. Honestly, the first experience still matters. If a player takes damage within half a second of entering a room, that raises a question for me. It doesn't necessarily mean the room is badly designed, but it means I'd take another look at it, especially because Isaac has a very particular relationship with damage. Every heart you lose matters, every mistake matters, and that makes any hit that feels unfair so much more frustrating. The crazy part is that all of this should push me away. It should make me say, okay, I'm done. And yet it doesn't. You keep going, every time. I've lost plenty of runs to something dumb, but 10 minutes later, I open Isaac back up. It's almost annoying. I would like to pin down exactly which gear in the machine is hooking me. And it's not that simple. If I take a game that's built almost flawlessly, I can explain why it works. But Isaac keeps slipping through my fingers. And that's exactly why I wanted to make this video. Not to say the game is bad, but because it's one of the few games that forces me to question some beliefs I held about game design. Because the more you criticize it, the more you keep playing it. And this is where we get to the part I actually wanted to talk about. Because up to this point, it probably sounds like I've spent this entire video tearing the binding of Isaac apart. If someone showed me a prototype with all of these traits, I'd probably tell them to fix at least half of them. And yet, the binding of Isaac is one of the most influential roguelikes ever made. So a question comes up naturally. How does it pull this off? How does a game that seems to go against so many best practices work this well? I think the answer is that we are looking at the wrong thing. When we make a game, we spend an enormous amount of time polishing details. But Isaac reminds you there's an even more important question. Does the player want to start another run? Because at the end of the day, that's the question that actually matters. The hard part is making a game that gets someone to say, one more run, even right after they just lost. A lot of people think a game's success comes down to doing everything better than the competition. I'm not sure about that anymore. I think it comes down to doing one thing so well that it makes you forget about everything else. Isaac, to me, is one of those games. But I'm still convinced it's a technically bad game. If you made it this far, I'm curious about something. What's that one game, the one you know rationally is full of flaws, that you keep playing? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.